the late-night anxiety. At some point, usually around 3 in the morning, your brain decides it's time to run the numbers. Not because you asked it to, but because silence leaves room for questions you've been avoiding. How many years do you realistically have left to work? How many of those years will actually feel stable? And somewhere in that spiral, retirement shows up like an unfinished sentence you're supposed to complete with confidence. You start doing math you never planned to do. If you work until 65, that's this many years away. If you save this much per month, that becomes some distant total you're not sure how to trust. You remember hearing a number once. Maybe from an article, a podcast, a coworker, or a headline you didn't fully read. The average person retires with this much, and that number just sits there in your head, quietly judging you. Depending on where you are right now, that number either feels reassuring or terrifying. If you're close to it, you tell yourself you're probably fine. If you're far from it, you assume you've already failed some invisible test everyone else passed. What makes this worse is that no one ever explains what that number actually represents. It's just presented as reality, as if it applies equally to you, your parents, your boss, and the internet billionaire you'll never meet. So you lie there, staring at the ceiling, feeling a low-level pressure that never quite turns into panic but never fully leaves either. You're not reckless. You're not irresponsible. You're trying, but the rules feel vague. The benchmarks feel arbitrary, and the future feels expensive in ways you can't clearly define yet. Here's the part that matters. That number you're comparing yourself to, the one shaping how you feel about your entire financial future, is doing far more harm than good. Not because it's too high or too low, but because it's fundamentally misunderstood. And until you understand why, every comparison you make will quietly work against you. This is why the conversation around retirement feels so disorienting. Before we talk about solutions, strategies, or saving rates, there's one critical thing you need to see clearly. The number itself isn't the truth. It's a shortcut. And shortcuts, especially in money, usually hide more than they reveal. Once you understand that, everything that follows will make sense, including why so many people feel behind without actually being behind at all today now. The number everyone thinks they know. Somewhere along the way, a specific retirement number becomes common knowledge. You hear it quoted casually, almost confidently, as if it were a fact of nature. Articles reference it. Headlines shout it. Conversations circle around it. The average person retires with this much. No explanation, no nuance. Just a clean figure that pretends to summarize an entire lifetime of work and saving. People obsess over it because it feels like a shortcut to certainty. Money is complicated, retirement is abstract, and most of us want a simple answer to a hard question. Am I okay or not? That number promises to tell you. If you're above it, you relax. If you're below it, you worry. It turns a long, personal journey into a quick comparison you can do in your head while waiting in line. The media loves this number because it's clickable. It compresses complexity into something dramatic and shareable. Financial sites repeat it because it sounds authoritative. Friends mention it because it's easier than admitting they're unsure too. Over time, it becomes a benchmark that feels official, even though very few people could explain where it came from or who it actually describes. This is where the damage starts. For some people, that number creates a false sense of security. They assume being near it means they're set, even if their expenses, timing, or lifestyle make that unlikely. For others, it creates a quiet panic. They look at their own savings, see a gap, and conclude they're behind in some permanent, irreversible way. Same number, opposite emotional reactions, neither grounded in real understanding. What almost no one asks is the most important question. Average compared to what, exactly? Average across which ages, incomes, careers, and life paths? Average including people who barely saved anything and people who saved enormous amounts? When you hear the word average, your brain fills in a picture of a normal person living a normal life. But statistics don't work that way, especially when money is involved. The real danger isn't that the number is wrong. It's that it's incomplete. It flattens wildly different realities into a single point and then invites you to judge yourself against it. It makes you think there's a standard experience when there really isn't. Before you decide whether you're ahead, behind, or doomed, you need to understand what that number actually represents. And once you do, the way you think about retirement will start to shift. That shift won't magically solve everything, but it will replace vague fear with clarity. And clarity is the only place where real planning, realistic expectations, and calm decisions can actually begin for most people today. Why averages lie about money. Money statistics sound simple until you look closer. One word quietly does most of the damage: average. In everyday language, average feels like normal, typical, representative. When you hear the average retirement savings, your brain imagines a regular person living a regular life. But mathematically, average means something very specific. And that difference matters more than almost any other detail in this conversation. Here is the simplest way to understand it. Imagine 10 people standing in a room. 9 of them have $1. The 10th person has $1 million. If you add the money together and divide by 10, the average person in that room has over $100,000. But no one in that room actually lives that reality. 9 people are broke. 1 person is rich, and the average describes nobody. This exact distortion happens with retirement savings, only on a much larger scale. A small group of people retire with enormous portfolios. Business owners, executives, early investors, and people who benefited from timing, inheritance, or extreme income sit at the very top. When their numbers are averaged together with millions of ordinary workers, the result balloons upward. The average climbs higher and higher, even though most people never get anywhere near it. The math doesn't care about fairness, context, or emotional impact. It only cares about totals. This is why comparing yourself to an average retirement number feels so destabilizing. You're measuring your very real life against a statistic designed to be skewed. It quietly combines ultra-wealthy outcomes with normal careers and pretends the blend is meaningful. When you fall short, it feels personal, even though the comparison was broken from the start. Financial media rarely explains this, not because it's malicious, but because nuance doesn't spread well. Simpler numbers travel faster, even when they mislead. There is another number that tells a far more honest story, and it changes everything once you see it. It's called the median. Instead of averaging everything together, the median shows the exact middle point. Half of people have more, half have less. No distortion from extreme wealth. No invisible billionaires bending the math. When you look at retirement through the median instead of the average, the picture becomes clearer and often more sobering, but also more realistic. It reflects real lives, real careers, and real limitations. Most importantly, it removes the false sense of failure created by comparisons that were never fair. Understanding this shift doesn't lower the bar or make excuses. It replaces confusion with accuracy. And accuracy is the foundation for any plan that actually works. This distinction matters because retirement isn't an abstract contest. It's a lived outcome. You don't retire inside a spreadsheet. You retire inside a body, a household, and a set of expenses that don't care about averages. Using the wrong benchmark turns planning into emotional guesswork. Using the right one turns it into something manageable. The moment you switch from average thinking to median thinking, the noise drops. You stop chasing a phantom and start seeing where people actually land. That clarity doesn't guarantee comfort, but it gives you something far more valuable than reassurance. It gives you a truthful starting point over time. Why this doesn't mean you're doomed. If everything we've covered so far landed a little heavy, that's understandable. Real numbers tend to do that. But clarity is not the same thing as a verdict. Understanding how misleading comparisons work does not mean your future is fixed. It means you finally have the right map. Most people assume retirement outcomes are decided by a single moment they already missed. The promotion that never came, the investment they didn't make, the years they wish they had started earlier. That story feels convincing because it's dramatic. But real retirement success is quieter and far less cinematic. It's built through structure, consistency, and time, not sudden income explosions. Here's the part almost no one emphasizes. Retirement is not a test you pass or fail. It's a positioning problem. Where you are today relative to your expenses, your timeline, and your behavior matters far more than where you stand compared to a distorted benchmark. Someone earning more than you can still be far less prepared if their lifestyle expanded faster than their savings. Someone starting later can still build stability if they design their system correctly. Starting earlier is powerful, but starting now still counts. Time doesn't only reward early action, it also rewards sustained action. Small, boring decisions repeated consistently outperform dramatic plans that never stick. Increasing savings gradually, controlling lifestyle creep, and letting compounding do its quiet work creates momentum most people underestimate. The belief that it's too late often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. When people assume the outcome is already decided, they stop engaging, they delay, they avoid looking. And that avoidance, not age or income, is what actually locks in bad results. Awareness interrupts that loop. The moment you understand how the game is really scored, you regain agency. Here's the part almost no one emphasizes. Retirement is not a test you pass or fail. It's a positioning problem. Where you are today, relative to your expenses, your timeline, and your behavior, matters far more than where you stand compared to a distorted benchmark. Someone earning more than you can still be far less prepared if their lifestyle expanded faster than their savings. Someone starting later can still build stability if they design their system correctly. Starting earlier is powerful, but starting now still counts. Time doesn't only reward early action, it also rewards sustained action. Small, boring decisions repeated consistently outperform dramatic plans that never stick. Increasing savings gradually, controlling lifestyle creep, and letting compounding do its quiet work creates momentum.